What is up, everyone? I am TST's the Mudman, and it's time to figure out what we are going to play this weekend ranked in Gods Unchained. But first, I was sick last week, so there was no video, and I've got some announcements to make. Our October giveaway is over. These 40 community members won 6.9 gods each, courtesy of Caution Fun and his Council of Mortals salary. If you didn't win, don't worry, we'll be doing many more contests and giveaways on this channel, so it's probably smart to like and comment on this video just as practice. You don't want to be rusty the next time we do a giveaway. But that being said, we are on gudex.com looking at the Mythic meta over the past 7 days by god popularity. We haven't had a balance update since the last video, so the meta is pretty much the same. As you can see, Deception and Light are the two most popular gods, and although Deception is slightly more popular than Light, Zoo Light is by far the most popular single archetype, so when you are picking your deck this weekend, you're going to have to pick a god or an archetype that does well against Zoo Light, because you'll be seeing lots of it this weekend. But let's talk about each god and their most popular archetypes so you know what you'll be running into this week. The most popular archetype for Deception is Hidden Rush Deception or Aggro Deception. There's also the more control-oriented, like Steal Your Stuff Deception, but Aggressive Deception is far more popular. We already discussed Light, it's almost entirely Zoo Light. Zoo Light is very powerful right now. Then we have Magic. Magic is a very versatile god. It can either be Control Magic, Tempo Magic, like a Combo Magic, Arcane Burst. OTK Magic decks are becoming pretty popular, but Control Magic is generally the most popular Magic archetype, followed by Tempo Magic. If you see your Magic opponent picks the Clear Mind God Power, then that's a dead giveaway. They are not one of those two aforementioned decks, and they are a combo-oriented deck. Then we have War, which is currently the highest individual win rate god, which makes a lot of sense. War is the god best equipped for dealing with Zoo Light, and Zoo Light is very popular. War can either be a very aggressive Viking-oriented war or Control War. Both archetypes are pretty good, but Control War is far better, and Control War is very good at beating Zoo Light. Then as we get to the bottom, we have Nature. Nature is almost always aggressive, wild nature. It's essentially the same as Zoo Light, it's just their creature buffs are worse, their creatures are confused, they just do everything worse than Zoo Light. So I'm not a huge fan of Nature right now. And then the least popular god of all is Death. Death is another very versatile god. It can be Zombie Death, it can be Anubian Death, Over-the-Line Death, Board Wipe Death, and any of the sub-variations of Board Wipe Death. However, Zombies and Anubians are by far the two most popular Death archetypes. If you see your Death opponent pick Solver and God Power, then that is a dead giveaway. They are zombies. Every other god or every other Death archetype, for the most part, picks up Blood Ritual God Power. But when you see Blood Ritual God Power, that's most likely an Anubian deck. And now that we have done this brief overview of the meta, let's look at some deck lists you might want to play this weekend. Alright, let's start things off with the most popular archetype and the best performing deck of last week. This is a Zoo Light list made by Meppo. Meppo went 17 of 18 with it last week, and it's a pretty normal Zoo Light list, nothing particularly out of the ordinary. We do have 2 copies of Intimidating Uplifter, which is not the most common light card ever. It, however, fits the mold very well. It's a creature that buffs other creatures, so it does the same thing as like a Fellow Janissary or a Militant Theist. As far as creature buffs are concerned, we of course have Lysander Spear, which is just amazing, wins cards on its own. Similar thing can be said for Radiant Dawn. We also have a copy of Chaining of the Gods, which is another not particularly popular light creature buff. I've been experimenting with this card a lot this past week. It seems pretty powerful. Oftentimes, making an opponent's creature the biggest creature weaker, or turning one of your little puny 1/1s that you get from a new Lights Levy, giving it an extra +2/+3 is very strong. It seems like a good AoE creature buff. We also have a copy of Protective Benediction, which is excellent. It's particularly powerful in the mirror match, also against like Tempo Magic decks. And Canonized to round it out. No more Asterius. We're keeping the curve low to the ground for max aggression. And yeah, there's really, there's nothing groundbreaking about this light deck. Zoo Light is an incredibly powerful archetype. Meppo here made a very strong, very consistent list. So if you're a fan of the Zoo Light archetype, then this could be a great choice for this weekend ranked event. Alright, next up we have Aggro Deception. This deck was made by Aggro Deception Master Icy Squid, and I am a big fan of this Aggressive Deception list. As you can see, Squid has removed all of the normal card draw elements from Aggressive Deception. There are no Fermentary Instigators, there's no Shakedowns, there's not even any Looters. We do, of course, have 2 copies of Ludia's Dedicant, which can generate you resources for some pseudo card draw effects. But in lieu of all of those card draw cards, Squid has thrown in more creatures and more creature damage. As you can see, there are 2 copies of Arms Dealer in this deck, which is not particularly common card in Deception currently. It's a 4-mana 3/3 Echo creature. Its effect is, at the start of your turn, you lose 1 mana, and then you give +1 strength to each of your friendly creatures for the rest of the turn. So it can be a massive AoE buff, and with its Echo effect, you can potentially put 2 on the board at one time for a +2 attack buff. However, there is one important interaction with Arms Dealer. This may have changed. I haven't played Arms Dealer in a few months. However, if you have Switch Duelist on the board while you have Arms Dealer on the board, it'll obviously buff your Switch Duelist attack. However, when the turn ends, your Switch Duelist will swap back to 3/1, and then it will lose its attack value, making it a 0/3, and then when it switches back to your turn, it will subsequently have 0 health, killing itself. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure this is still how the interaction works, but I'm pretty sure it does, so keep that in mind when you're playing your Arms Dealers and you have your Switch Duelists on the board. We also have 2 copies of Surprise Delivery, which is a card that sort of comes and goes from Aggro Deception based on the meta, and I'm a big fan of Surprise Delivery currently, mainly because Aggro Light or Zoo Light is the most popular god. They like to fill their board up and then, mass buff them. This card fills up 3 spaces on your Zoo Light opponent's board, so they cannot, buff their board as much as they'd like to, and then, of course, it is 6 damage eventually. We also have a copy of Pietro in here, which is a great card for refilling your board, hiding everything, guaranteeing you can deal lots of damage. And then we just have our general heavy hitters in here. Shadewalker is good for a lot of damage. Lokian Disciple, he's fairly big. He can definitely take an Assassin's Aim to get bigger. Same thing can be said with your Avatar. We have all of the normal board buffs that we always have in our Aggressive Deception decks. We have that aforementioned Assassin's Aim. We have our 2 copies of Dark Knives. Of course, we have our cat, so you can give your cat a knife and win the game. All in all, I am a big fan of this Deception list. It seems very powerful. You have lots of good creatures all the way down the curve. There isn't as much card draw, but if you can win the game, who needs card draw? So if you are a fan of the Aggro Deception archetype, if you like having hidden creatures that your opponent just can't interact with, then this could be a great list for you. Alright, so next up we have Magic, and today I have 2 different Magic decks to show you. We're going to start things off with some card draw Magic. This deck was made by Clutch, and I think this is the exact same Tempo Magic list we showed off in the last video. Card draw Magic or Tempo Magic is a very strong archetype. This is the 48th video in this series, so you all know how Tempo Magic works. It's a strong deck. If you like playing it, you should play it. But let's talk about a new type of Magic deck. This is the Arcane Burst OTK Magic deck. This deck was made by H-Pain. 2 weeks ago, he performed very well with this list. I think he went 16 of 18 with it. And let's go over the OTK combo for anyone who is uninitiated. So as the name would suggest, this combo relies around Arcane Burst, a 7-mana spell that deals 1 damage to a character for each spell in your void that costs 3 or less. Up to 10, of course. And as you can see from the curve of this deck, we have more than enough spells that cost 3 or less to guarantee the Arcane Burst does all 10 damage. So you've got 10 damage from the Burst, and then you have 2 copies of Poetic Knowledge that you can use to bring your Arcane Burst back and deal 30 damage. You can make your knowledges free by combining them with your helpful Aether Foxes, and if you read the fine print on the knowledge, you see the card is obliterated at the end of the turn, not immediately after the card is played. So you can play your Arcane Burst for 10, play a 0-mana knowledge, throw another Arcane Burst for 20, play another knowledge, get the final burst for that final 30 damage. But as you can see, there is far more than just 30 damage available in this deck. We have 2 Arcane Bursts, so right off the bat, there's 40 damage. We also have 2 Hatchlings, as well as 2 copies of Unbound Flames. So you can deal far more than 30 damage if you need to. If your opponent does play something like a Safeguard Incantation, you have plenty of ways to pop the ward and protect it to deal all 30 damage to your opponent's face. Besides that, we have lots of card draw, as well as lots of Clear Mind effects. Foresee effects, one of which being the Clear Mind God Power. Another important card for this deck is the single copy of Librarian's Prayer, drawing you a single card and also just looking at the next 6 cards in your deck so you can get the combo pieces that you need and throw away the cards that you don't want. Form of Wisdom is another card that's probably important to take note of. With Form of Wisdom in combination with your Clear Mind God Power, it's not particularly difficult to guarantee that your Form of Wisdom could hit something like your Knowledge, making it so you don't need to play your Aether Foxes beforehand, so you're not advertising your OTK as much. All in all, I think this is a very powerful archetype. It's very hard to play around, what with how it can deal 30 damage for only 7 mana, and the way it can play around things like Ward and Fatigue in a better way than most combo Magic decks can. I think it's very powerful. H-Pain proved 2 weeks ago that this can perform very well on the weekend, so if you're a fan of those combo-oriented decks, if you like dealing 30 damage in one shot, then this could be a great choice for this weekend. Alright, next up we have Control War. This list was made by Party Boy Craig, and as of this moment, Party Boy Craig is currently 11-0, perfect 100% win rate, so this is an easy choice for this weekend ranked event. And like I said in the beginning of this video, Zoolite is the most popular archetype, and Control War is the archetype best equipped to defeat them. As you can see, we have some powerful blitz creatures. Wolf Cult Vanguard is excellent for dismantling Zoolite's board. The same thing can be said with Orcish Elite. We also have powerful relics in here like Magic Missile Launcher, capable of destroying many creatures as well as healing the face a little bit. We have Carnage Sweep as well as Soul Survivor for big AoE board clears. We have lots of healing in this deck. We have that aforementioned Magic Missile Launcher. There's the Grand Hall, which is not only a frontline creature getting in the way of your aggressive light opponents, but also turning all of your creatures into leech creatures to heal you back up. We also have Demogorgon in the healing category, as well as Avatar War for that final bunch of pressure, as well as some healing from his leech ability, as well as his relics ability. As we get into the late game, we have our heavy hitter cards. We have Therial to get lots of value, as well as powerful creatures in the hand to close out the game. We have Helia buffing your entire board, drawing you a card, combos very nicely with those cultists that Therial creates. We have that aforementioned Avatar War, not only good for healing, but also good for destroying your opponent with his 8/8 body and 10 damage of relic damage. Some other important cards of note in here is, of course, an End to War, which is pound for pound one of the best removal spells in the game. If you have 5 creatures in your void, you can just remove any creature from the game that you want as long as it has 1 or less armor. We also have the Ironborn Disruptor in here, a very powerful bit of relic removal in the meta currently. It lines up very nicely against cards like Lysander's Spear and Palace's Wand. It also destroys all of the various death relics. Excellent relic removal in the meta right now. Leviathan Hunter, always an important card for these Control War archetypes. It pairs very nicely with Carnage Sweep as well as Soul Survivor to facilitate all of your AoE needs. Besides that, we just have the powerful cards in the neutral slot. Gleamweaver to deal with all the relic-centric decks out there. Pyramid Warden because he's good and has frontline. Blind Martyr, Martyr of White Plains because it's insane. Blade of White Plains, also insane. Yeah, all in all, this deck is incredibly powerful. As you can see, Party Boy Craig is undefeated with this deck, so this should be an excellent choice for this weekend ranked event. Oh, before I forget, there is one important thing to note. You may think that you pick Slayer every time, but that's just the God Power that Party Boy Craig picked last. He picks the Slayer God Power against the control-oriented archetypes, and he picks the Creature God Power against the creature archetypes, so keep that in mind if you decide to play this list over the weekend. Alright, the final domain to discuss today is Heirloom Death. This list was made by GG Ambu Black Ops, and this is Heirloom Death. It's a very easy deck to understand. There's no reason to go over it. But there is one card important of note that I do want to go over, and that is Kaya, Conduit of the Gods. Oftentimes when you are playing against Heirloom Death, you either don't play a board going into 6 mana, or you play a very small board going into 6 mana. Because their primary win condition is, of course, playing Land of the Dead, trading their board into your board, and then killing you. So you can punish your opponent when they don't play a large board by dropping that Kaya and just dealing 6 damage guaranteed to face. A very interesting inclusion. I really like the idea of Kaya. I think it fits very well in the deck. You're sort of like checkmating your opponent, if you will. If they play a big board, you can Land of the Dead and beat them. If they don't play a big board, you can punish them with a Kaya that's dealing at least 6 damage and threatening to deal more the next turn. So yeah, all in all, it's Heirloom Death. It's a very easy deck to play. Everyone knows how it works, but I am a big fan of the Kaya in this deck. So if you like Heirloom Death, you might want to throw a Kaya in there. Could be fun. But that's it for Death. Let's jump into the conclusion. Alright, so it is conclusion time. We did the stuff. We talked about the things. What should you play this weekend ranked in Gods Unchained? Well, in my opinion, the answer is either Zoo Light. This has been the best performing archetype for the past few weeks for good reason, but if you are sick of the Zoo Light, you can go with the counterplay and hit him with the Control War. But whatever deck you go with, try to have fun. Tell us how you did in the TST Discord, and have a wonderful day.
Hey, you! Did you know that subscribing to the TST YouTube channel will increase your win rate by 6.9%? So what are you waiting for? Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications. And while you're at it, equip Scythe of the Harvest and attack the like button directly in the face. Bye-bye!